The carburetor was fighting me like everything else in my life lately. Grease under my fingernails, sweat dripping onto the concrete floor of my garage, and the damn thing still wouldn't cooperate. That's when Phoebe burst through the side door like a tornado in a business suit. "Danny, we need to talk." Her heels clicked against the oil-stained concrete as she threw her designer purse onto my workbench, scattering my tools. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked up at my girlfriend of 3 years. Phoebe Martinez had always been ambitious, but lately she'd transformed into something else entirely. The promotion to senior associate at Hartwell and Associates had changed her. Gone was the sweet paralegal who used to bring me coffee during late-night garage sessions. In her place stood a woman who looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "What's on your mind?" I asked, though her expression already told me I wasn't going to like it. Phoebe crossed her arms, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her silk blouse. "I want one night, one fantasy night before we get serious about starting a family." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The wrench slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. "Come again?" "You heard me. I want to experience something different. Someone different. Just once." Her voice was cold, clinical, like she was negotiating a contract. "Think of it as getting it out of my system." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You're asking for permission to cheat on me." "I'm asking for one night of freedom before we commit to forever." She stepped closer, her perfume mixing with the smell of motor oil. "Be mature about this, Danny. You know I love you, but I need to know what else is out there." The garage suddenly felt too small, too hot. I'd been working on engines since I was 16, taken over my dad's auto repair shop when he passed, built a decent life fixing what other people broke. But apparently that wasn't enough for the new Phoebe. "And if I say no?" Her smile was razor sharp. "Then you're not the man I thought you were." She wanted a hall pass. I gave her a door, and a little surprise waiting on the other side. "Fine," I said, surprising us both. "One night, but don't expect me to sit home waiting." Phoebe blinked, clearly not expecting such easy agreement. "Really? Really. In fact, take my truck. Your BMW might not be appropriate for wherever you're planning to go." I tossed her the keys to my beat-up Ford. What she didn't know was that I'd installed a GPS tracker in it last month after a string of vehicle thefts in the area. She caught the keys, looking almost disappointed by my calm reaction. "I'll be back tomorrow evening. Take your time." After she left, I sat in the silence of my garage, surrounded by the familiar smell of oil and metal. My phone buzzed with a text from my old boxing coach, Mickey Torino, who now ran Sullivan's Bar downtown. "Drink? You look like hell." I hadn't realized he could see me from across town, but Mickey had always been perceptive. I locked up the garage and headed to Sullivan's, where the neon beer signs cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. "She finally showed her true colors, huh?" Mickey asked, sliding a whiskey across the scarred wooden bar. "How'd you know?" "Same look your old man had when your mother ran off. That what the hell just happened expression." Mickey's weathered face creased into a knowing smile. "What's your play?" I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS tracking app. Phoebe's location showed she was at the Riverside Motel, about 10 miles outside town. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. And what's that? Freedom. The Riverside Motel was the kind of place where people went to make mistakes they'd regret forever. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, and parking lot full of cars that had seen better decades. I parked across the street and watched Phoebe's BMW pull up next to a shiny red Corvette that screamed midlife crisis. The man who stepped out was exactly what I'd expected. Brad Hutchinson, local real estate hotshot and part-time city council member, married with 2 kids, but that hadn't stopped him from sniffing around Phoebe at various town events. His polo shirt was too tight, his smile too white, and his handshake probably too firm. I watched them embrace in the motel parking lot, Phoebe's laugh carrying across the evening air. She looked different with him. Younger, more animated. It was like watching a stranger wear my girlfriend's face. They disappeared into room 237. I gave them 30 minutes, then made my move. The motel office smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams. The clerk, a thin man with suspicious eyes, looked up from his newspaper. "Help you?" "Yeah. My girlfriend left her purse in my truck, and she's in room 237. Could you let her know Danny's here with it?" The clerk shrugged and picked up the phone. Through the thin walls, I could hear muffled conversation, then Phoebe's voice, sharp with panic. "Tell him to leave it at the front desk. She says—" I heard her. I smiled at the clerk. "Tell her if she wants her purse, she can come get it herself." 5 minutes later, Phoebe emerged from the room, her hair disheveled and her blouse hastily buttoned. Brad lingered in the doorway, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Danny, what are you doing here?" I held up her purse, then slowly unzipped it. "Making sure you have everything you need for your fantasy night." I turned the purse upside down, spilling its contents across the hood of Brad's Corvette. Lipstick, credit cards, cash, and her phone scattered across the red paint. "Are you insane?" Phoebe scrambled to collect her belongings while Brad stood frozen. "Just being helpful." I looked at Brad, who was trying to blend into the motel room doorframe. "Nice car, Brad. Compensating for something." His face flushed red. "Now listen here." "No, you listen." I stepped closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne mixed with cheap motel soap. "My girlfriend wanted a fantasy. I'm just making sure she gets the full experience." I walked back to my truck, leaving them to clean up the mess. As I drove away, I called Mickey. "Phase 1 complete," I said. "What's Phase 2? She wanted freedom. I'm going to give her so much freedom she'll choke on it. The next morning, I was back at the garage when my phone rang. Phoebe's name flashed on the screen. "Danny, my car won't start." "That's unfortunate. Where are you?" A pause. "Brad's apartment complex." "I see. Well, I can have Jimmy's towing come get you, but it'll be a couple hours. They're pretty busy on Saturdays. Can't you come get me?" "Sorry, I'm swamped here. But hey, I'm sure Brad can give you a ride." I hung up and smiled. What Phoebe didn't know was that I'd loosened her battery cables the night before while she was inside the motel room. Nothing permanent, nothing illegal, just a little inconvenience. An hour later, Jimmy called. "Danny, I got that BMW you called about. Where do you want me to take it?" "My shop." "And Jimmy?" "Take the scenic route." By the time Phoebe made it back to town, half the neighborhood had seen her car being towed from Brad Hutchinson's apartment complex. In a town like ours, that was better than taking out a full-page ad in the local paper. She arrived at my garage in Brad's Corvette, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "You sabotaged my car!" I looked up from the engine I was working on. "That's a serious accusation. Can you prove it?" "I know it was you." "Your battery cables were loose. Happens all the time with older vehicles. I can fix it for you, though. Labor and parts, it'll run about $300. $300 for battery cables? Premium service costs extra." I wiped my hands on my coveralls. "How was your fantasy night, by the way?" Phoebe's jaw tightened. "It was exactly what I needed." "Good, because the whole town's talking about it." That got her attention. "What do you mean?" "Well, when Jimmy towed your car from Brad's place, Mrs. Patterson was walking her dog. You know how she likes to share interesting news with the church ladies." I shrugged. "Small towns, you know. Word travels fast." The color drained from Phoebe's face. "You planned this." "I didn't plan anything. I just gave you what you asked for, one night of freedom. Though I have to say, Brad's an interesting choice. Isn't he married to that school board president? What's her name? Janet?" "You're a bastard." "I'm practical. You wanted to explore your options, so I'm exploring mine." I gestured around the garage, starting with whether I want a girlfriend who thinks I'm not enough for her. Phoebe stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back to Brad's car. As she drove away, I noticed Mrs. Patterson across the street, pretending to water her flowers while watching the whole scene. I waved at her. She waved back, her phone already pressed to her ear. Let the games begin. By Monday morning, Phoebe's fantasy night had become the hottest gossip in town. I knew this because 3 different customers mentioned it while dropping off their cars, each trying to sound casual while fishing for details. "Heard Phoebe's been spreading her wings," said Tom Fletcher, handing me the keys to his pickup. "Must be hard on you, Danny." "Not really," I replied. "Sometimes you don't know what you've got until you see it clearly." Tom nodded sagely, though I could tell he was disappointed by my lack of drama. People love a good scandal, but they love watching someone fall apart even more. Phoebe showed up at the garage around noon, looking like she hadn't slept. Her usual perfect appearance was cracked around the edges. Wrinkled blouse, smudged makeup, hair that had seen better days. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." She glanced around the garage, noting the 2 customers waiting in the small office area. "Privately." "This is private enough. What's on your mind?" "People are talking." "People always talk." "What are they saying?" Phoebe's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're saying that I'm sleeping around." "Are you?" "It was one night. You said it was okay." I set down my wrench and looked at her directly. I said fine. I didn't say there wouldn't be consequences. "What consequences?" "You sabotaged my car. humiliated me in front of the whole town. I fixed your loose battery cables and minded my own business. If you're embarrassed, that's between you and your choices. One of the waiting customers, old Pete Morrison, was clearly enjoying the show. His hearing aid was turned up so high I could hear the feedback from across the room. Phoebe noticed him too. Can we please go somewhere private? No. You wanted freedom, remember? Freedom means owning your decisions in public. Her face flushed red. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, I'm being completely honest. I picked up my wrench again. You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought about fighting for you. Thought about begging you to reconsider, maybe proposing to lock you down. Danny. But then I realized something. A woman who loves you doesn't ask permission to cheat. She doesn't shop around for a better deal while keeping you as backup. I tightened a bolt with more force than necessary. So thank you. Thank me. For showing me who you really are before I made a bigger mistake. Phoebe stood there for a moment, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking angrily against the concrete. Pete Morrison whistled low. That girl's got some nerve. That she does, Pete. That she does. That evening, I was at Sullivan's bar when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Brad. We need to talk. I showed the message to Mickey, who was wiping down glasses behind the bar. Looks like Loverboy wants a chat, Mickey said. You gonna meet him? Why not? I'm curious what he has to say. I texted back, Sullivan's bar, 1 hour. Brad arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and overdressed in his expensive suit. The bar's regular crowd, mechanics, construction workers, and retired cops, looked him over like wolves sizing up a rabbit. Danny. He slid onto the bar stool next to me, his cologne fighting a losing battle against the bar's atmosphere of cigarettes and spilled beer. Brad, how's married life treating you? His jaw tightened. That's what I want to talk about. This thing with Phoebe? What thing? You know what thing. People are talking and my wife is asking questions. I sipped my whiskey. What kind of questions? The kind that could ruin my marriage, my business, my position on the city council. Sounds serious. It is serious. Brad leaned closer, his voice dropping. I need you to help me control this situation. Control it how? Tell people it was a misunderstanding, that Phoebe's car broke down and I was just helping her. I laughed, actually laughed. You want me to lie to protect your reputation? I want you to be reasonable. We're both men here. We both have things to lose. What do I have to lose, Brad? He gestured around the bar. Your business. You're standing in the community. I have friends on the city council, connections at the bank where you have your business loans. The bar went quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to sense the tension. I set down my glass and turned to face Brad fully. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. This town runs on relationships, Danny. Cross the wrong people, and life gets difficult. Mickey appeared behind the bar, a baseball bat visible in his hands. Several of the regulars had stopped their conversations to watch our exchange. Here's some reality for you, Brad, I said calmly. You slept with my girlfriend in a cheap motel, and now you want me to help you cover it up. That about sum it up? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And now you're threatening my livelihood because your wife might find out what kind of man she married. Brad's face was flushed now, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm trying to handle this like gentlemen. No, you're trying to handle this like a coward. I stood up, noting that I had 3 inches and 30 pounds on him. Here's how we're going to handle it. You're going to walk out of here and never contact me again. You're going to leave Phoebe alone, and you're going to explain to your wife how your car ended up at the Riverside Motel. And if I don't? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then I stopped being reasonable. Brad looked around the bar, taking in the hostile faces surrounding him. These were my people, blue-collar workers who didn't have much patience for entitled rich boys who threatened their friends. This isn't over, he said, standing up. Yeah, it is. He left money on the bar and walked out, his expensive shoes clicking against the worn wooden floor. The bar stayed quiet until his Corvette pulled out of the parking lot, then erupted in laughter and backslapping. Drinks are on me, Mickey announced. Anyone who threatens family gets the full Sullivan's treatment. I stayed at the bar until closing time, surrounded by friends who had my back. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Brad's threats weren't empty. Men like him didn't make idle promises, and they didn't forgive public humiliation. The war was just beginning. The first sign of trouble came on Thursday morning when my oldest friend, Jake Morrison, walked into the garage with a grim expression. Jake and I had been tight since high school. He was best man at my almost wedding to Lisa 5 years ago, and I'd helped him through his divorce last year. Danny, we got a problem. I looked up from the transmission I was rebuilding. What kind of problem? The kind where Brad Hutchinson is spreading stories about you threatening him at Sullivan's. I didn't threaten him. I explained reality. Jake shifted uncomfortably. That's not how he's telling it. He's saying you and Mickey's bar crowd ganged up on him, made physical threats. That's bullshit, and you know it. I know it, but other people don't. Jake sat down on a milk crate I used as a chair. He's got people's ears, Danny. Important people. Since when do you care about important people? Since they started asking questions about our friendship. That got my attention. What kind of questions? The kind that affect my job at the water department. The kind that affect my kids' standing at school. Jake wouldn't meet my eyes. Look, maybe you should just apologize. Smooth things over. I set down my wrench and stared at my oldest friend. Apologize for what? For making this bigger than it needed to be. Phoebe made a mistake, sure, but you didn't have to humiliate her publicly. I didn't humiliate anyone. She humiliated herself. Come on, Danny. The whole towing thing? Making sure Mrs. Patterson saw everything? That was calculated. So what if it was? Jake finally looked at me. So maybe it's time to be the bigger man. The bigger man. I tasted the words like they were poison. Let me get this straight. My girlfriend asks permission to cheat, does it with a married city council member, and I'm supposed to apologize for not handling it quietly? I'm just saying. You're saying I should roll over and take it because Brad Hutchinson has connections. Jake stood up. I'm saying I can't afford to be associated with this anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. Associated with what? With whatever vendetta you're planning. People are talking, Danny. They're saying you're planning something big, something that could hurt a lot of people. What people? People who matter in this town. I laughed, but it came out bitter. People who matter, and I don't matter. Is that it? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. I picked up my wrench again, focusing on the transmission to keep my hands from shaking with anger. Get out of my garage, Jake. Danny, get out. He left without another word. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mike Chen, another longtime friend who worked at the bank. Danny, I just got off the phone with Jake. He's worried about you. Jake's worried about his job. Maybe he should be. Maybe we all should be. Mike's voice was strained. Look, I'm calling as a friend. Brad Hutchinson came to see my boss yesterday. He's asking questions about your business loans, your payment history. My blood ran cold. What kind of questions? The kind that could make life difficult if you're not current on everything. I'm current. I know you are. But banks have ways of making things complicated if the right people ask the right questions. So you're warning me off, too? A long pause. I'm telling you to be smart. Pick your battles. I didn't pick this battle, Mike. It picked me. Then maybe it's time to surrender. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my garage, surrounded by the familiar tools and machinery that had been my life for 15 years, and realized I was completely alone. That evening, I drove to Sullivan's, expecting to find my usual crowd of allies. Instead, I found an almost empty bar. Mickey was behind the counter, polishing glasses with unusual intensity. Slow night, I observed. Yeah, real slow. He didn't look up. Danny, we need to talk. Let me guess. Brad Hutchinson paid you a visit too? Not him directly, but his lawyer did. Something about reviewing our liquor license, making sure we're in compliance with all city ordinances. I felt the walls closing in. Mickey, you've been running this place for 20 years. Your license is clean. Was clean. Turns out there are a lot of regulations I didn't know about. A lot of ways a place like this can get shut down if the wrong people want it shut down. So you're abandoning me too? Mickey finally looked up, his weathered face showing every one of his 60 years. I'm not abandoning you, kid. I'm trying to survive. This place is all I got left. And my friendship means nothing. Your friendship means everything. That's why I'm asking you to let this go. I finished my drink and stood up. Everybody wants me to let it go. Let Phoebe cheat. Let Brad threaten me. Let them all walk away clean while I pretend it never happened. Sometimes that's what being a man means. No, Mickey. Sometimes being a man means standing up for yourself, even when everyone else tells you to lie down. I walked out of Sullivan's, knowing I might never be welcome back. In the space of one day, I'd lost my 3 closest friends and my only sanctuary. Brad Hutchinson had played his cards perfectly, isolating me from everyone who might have stood by me. But he'd made one mistake. He'd assumed I needed allies to fight back. He was about to learn how wrong he was. By Friday, the isolation was complete. Word had spread through town that I was unstable, dangerous, planning something. Customers canceled appointments, suppliers demanded cash up front. Even Mrs. Patterson, the neighborhood gossip who'd been so eager to spread Phoebe's scandal, crossed the street to avoid me. I spent the morning in my empty garage planning my next move. If they wanted to see unstable, I'd show them unstable. If they wanted to see dangerous, I'd give them a masterclass. Phoebe showed up around noon, looking nervous but determined. "Danny, this has to stop." "What has to stop?" "This campaign of yours. The whole town is on edge." I laughed. "Campaign? I haven't done anything except exist." "You're planning something. Everyone knows it." "Everyone knows what Brad Hutchinson told them to know." Phoebe stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He's scared, Danny. Really scared." "Good. He's talking about getting a restraining order." "Based on what?" "Based on you threatening him at Sullivan's." "I never threatened him." "Can you prove that?" I studied her face, looking for some sign of the woman I'd once loved. "Why are you here, Phoebe?" "Really?" She hesitated. "Because I still care about you." "Bullshit." "It's true. What happened between us? It wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being confused, scared of commitment. And Brad helped you work through that confusion?" Her face flushed. "That was a mistake?" "The only mistake was me thinking you were worth 3 years of my life." "Danny, please. He's offering to leave town. Take a transfer to his company's Denver office. Just let this end." "He's running away. He's giving you what you want." I considered this. Brad leaving town would solve the immediate problem, but it wouldn't address the bigger issue. It wouldn't restore my friendships or my reputation. It wouldn't undo the damage to my business. "What do you want, Phoebe?" "I want us to try again. I want to fix this." "Us? There is no us. You made sure of that." "One mistake doesn't have to end everything." "It wasn't one mistake. It was a series of choices. You chose to ask for permission to cheat. You chose Brad. You chose to humiliate me publicly." I stepped closer. "And now you're choosing to help him escape the consequences." "I'm trying to help both of you." "No, you're trying to help yourself. If Brad leaves town quietly, people might forget about your fantasy night. You might salvage your reputation." Phoebe's mask slipped, showing the calculation underneath. "What's wrong with that?" "Nothing, but I'm not interested in helping you." "Then what do you want?" "Justice." That evening, I put my plan into motion. I'd spent the afternoon researching Brad Hutchinson's business dealings, using the same attention to detail I applied to rebuilding engines. What I found was interesting. Brad's real estate company had been involved in several questionable deals over the past 2 years. Properties bought cheap from desperate sellers, then flipped to the city for development projects. Nothing technically illegal, but ethically questionable. The kind of thing that would interest investigative journalists. I made copies of public records, cross-referenced property sales with city council votes, and compiled a timeline that showed a clear pattern of self-dealing. Then I packaged it all up and sent it to 3 different news outlets: the local paper, the regional TV station, and a state-level investigative reporter who specialized in municipal corruption. Saturday morning, I was back in my garage when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Danny Morrison?" "Speaking." "This is Janet Hutchinson, Brad's wife." That got my attention. "Mrs. Hutchinson, what can I do for you?" "I think we should talk, in person." "About what?" "About my husband's relationship with your girlfriend." An hour later, Janet Hutchinson sat in my garage office, looking nothing like the polished political wife I'd seen at city events. She was attractive in a suburban mom way, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. "How long have you known?" I asked. "About Phoebe specifically, since Monday, about his affairs in general. 2 years." "Affairs? Plural?" Janet smiled coldly. "Phoebe's not his first fantasy fulfillment. She's just the first one stupid enough to get caught publicly." "Why haven't you divorced him?" "Because I'm not stupid. Brad's infidelity is worth about $2 million in alimony and child support, but only if I can prove a pattern of behavior. And you need evidence. I need witnesses, people willing to testify about what they've seen." I leaned back in my chair. "What's in it for me?" "Revenge. The kind that actually matters." She opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder. "Brad's been using city resources to facilitate his affairs. City vehicles, city credit cards, even city properties. The Riverside Motel? The city owns that through a development shell company Brad set up. He took Phoebe to a city-owned motel? He takes all his girlfriends there. It's his private little playground paid for by taxpayers. I flipped through the documents. Financial records, credit card statements, vehicle logs. It was a prosecutor's dream. Why come to me? Because you're the only one in town who's not afraid of him anymore. Everyone else has been bought off or scared off. And you think I can help you how? Janet's smile was predatory. By being exactly what everyone says you are. Unstable, dangerous, unpredictable. I'm listening. There's a city council meeting Tuesday night. Budget discussions, very boring. But Brad will be there, and so will most of his business associates. The meeting's being recorded for the city archives. So if someone were to stand up during public comment and start reading from these documents, it would all be on the official record, protected speech. And if that someone happened to mention specific names and dates, then those names and dates would become part of a public investigation. I studied the documents more carefully. The evidence was damning, a clear pattern of corruption stretching back years. What about Phoebe? What about her? She gets caught up in this too. Janet shrugged. She made her choice. Actions have consequences. I thought about Phoebe, about the woman I'd loved and the stranger she'd become, about Jake and Mike and Mickey, all so quick to abandon me when things got difficult, about Brad Hutchinson using his position to prey on women and threaten anyone who opposed him. I'll do it. Janet stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Danny? Yeah? Make it count. Tuesday night, the city council chambers were packed. Word had somehow gotten out that something big was going to happen, and everyone wanted a front row seat for the show. I sat in the back, the manila folder on my lap, watching Brad Hutchinson play the role of concerned public servant. He looked confident, relaxed, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. When they called for public comment, I stood up. Danny Morrison, local business owner. Brad's expression changed when he saw me, confidence replaced by wariness. I'm here tonight to discuss the proper use of city resources, I began, opening the folder. Specifically, how those resources have been used to facilitate personal relationships between city officials and local residents. The room went dead quiet. Brad started to stand, but the mayor gestured for him to remain seated. On March 15th, I continued, reading from the documents. City vehicle number 47 was signed out by Councilman Hutchinson for official business. The vehicle's GPS log shows it traveled to the Riverside Motel, where it remained for 3 hours. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see Phoebe in the third row, her face pale as death. On April 2nd, the same vehicle made the same trip, and on April 20th, and on May 3rd. I looked up from the papers. In fact, over the past 6 months, City Vehicle 47 has made 17 trips to the Riverside Motel, always signed out for official business. Brad was on his feet now. This is a personal attack. The Riverside Motel, I continued, ignoring him, is owned by Riverside Development LLC, which is owned by the city of Millbrook, making it effectively a city-owned facility. The mayor was frantically whispering to the city attorney, who was frantically flipping through legal documents. Furthermore, I said, pulling out credit card statements, city credit card ending in 4847 assigned to Councilman Hutchinson shows multiple charges at local restaurants, florists, and jewelry stores. The dates of these charges correspond exactly with the dates of the motel visits. The crowd was buzzing now, voices rising as people put the pieces together. "This is slander," Brad shouted. "I demand this man be removed." "It's not slander if it's true," I replied calmly, "and it's not slander if it's documented in official city records." I held up the final document. This is a sworn affidavit from Janet Hutchinson, detailing her husband's use of city resources to facilitate extramarital affairs. She's prepared to testify under oath about the pattern of behavior she's observed. The room erupted. People were shouting questions, reporters were scribbling notes, and Brad Hutchinson was pushing his way toward the exit. But I wasn't done. The most recent of these affairs, I said, my voice carrying over the chaos, involved Phoebe Martinez, an attorney with Hartwell & Associates. The affair was conducted using city resources in a city-owned facility during city business hours. Phoebe bolted from her seat and ran for the door. Brad was already gone, but the damage was done. Everything was on the record now, part of the official city archives. The meeting dissolved into chaos. The mayor called for order, then called for a recess, then finally gave up and adjourned. But the real business was just beginning. Within a week, Brad Hutchinson had resigned from the city council and left town. The state attorney general's office opened an investigation into municipal corruption. Janet Hutchinson filed for divorce, armed with enough evidence to take him for everything he was worth. Phoebe lost her job at Hartwell and Associates. The firm couldn't afford to be associated with the scandal. She left town too, heading back to her family in California. Jake, Mike, and Mickey all tried to reconcile with me after the truth came out, but it was too late. I'd learned who my real friends were when it mattered. I reopened my garage and found that business was better than ever. Apparently, the town respected a man who stood up for himself, even if they'd been too scared to stand with him. 6 months later, I was working late when a familiar figure appeared in my garage doorway. It was Phoebe, looking tired and defeated. "Hello, Danny." "Phoebe, heard you were back in town." "Just visiting my parents. I wanted to see you." "Why?" "To apologize. For everything." I set down my wrench and looked at her. Okay, I'm listening." "I was selfish and cruel. I hurt you in ways I can't take back. I destroyed everything good between us because I was too immature to appreciate what I had." "You're right." She blinked, clearly expecting more resistance. "That's it?" "What else do you want me to say? You apologized, I accepted it. We're even." "Are we?" "Because I destroyed your life, too." I laughed. "You didn't destroy my life, Phoebe. You revealed it. You showed me who my real friends were, who I could really count on. You taught me that sometimes you have to stand alone to find out who you really are." "And who are you?" I gestured around the garage, at the tools and machinery that had been my constant companions through everything. "I'm a man who fixes things. And sometimes the most important thing you can fix is yourself." Phoebe nodded, tears in her eyes. "I hope you find someone who deserves you." "I already did." "Who?" "Me." She left without another word. I went back to work, surrounded by the familiar sounds of my garage, finally at peace with who I was and what I'd become. The fantasy was over. Reality was so much better.